Okay, well, welcome and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Jain Irrigation Training Series. I'm your host, Richard Restuccia, and I'm really excited to be talking about water management consulting services for vineyards. Now, water management consulting services, I really want to try to do a good job at identifying what this is, right? This is people at Jain and our water management consulting services department, like Connor, who actually work with growers, make recommendations on how much we should water, for how long, really entrench themselves with the growers so that the growers maximize their yields, cut back on their water, so they actually save water and save costs, and hopefully reduce labor as well. So this is really exciting because we just rolled this out not that long ago. We've had really good success. I know I've talked to many of the customers. We've even had a few on a couple of the webinars, and they're all really excited about the partnership and how well this consulting service works. I also know that we've been heavy in the nut crops, which makes sense, right? There's a high majority of nut crops that use water, but vineyard management, right? This is kind of the next step because a lot of people believe, and I'm one of them, you know, your water really does, and how you manage that water ultimately affects the taste of the wine you're making from the grapes. So it's really exciting for me to have Connor come on today and talk about this. Connor, as you guys have probably seen before, does technical sales and project management for Jain. He's entrenched with this water management consulting services group, has been doing this for a couple of years on the consulting side, but has been involved in ag technology for most of his professional life. And you don't find that many people with 5+ years experience in ag technology, but Connor's one of them. Connor grew up in the Central Valley, Fresno State grad, go Bulldogs. And if you've worked with him or listened to him, you know that he really cares about a couple things that are really important. One, he does care about sustainability, conservation, water management. And then number two, just as importantly, he cares about his customer success. So I'm always excited to talk to Connor. So Connor, welcome. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you. And as we talked, it's nice to be here in the AC inside the office instead of out in the field right now.
Right.
I enjoy going to the field, don't get me wrong, but it is nice to get a break from it here in the office every once in a while.
Right. You're clicking away at that over 100-degree temperature day today. And yeah, it's got to feel okay. Now,
yes, exactly.
Yeah. So Connor, like I said, I think you've been, I know you've got a lot of satisfied customers, happy customers with water management consulting services. But as I mentioned, I think it's mostly been for almonds. But I know that you've been branching out. You've picked up some vineyard customers now. Is there a big difference between how you manage water for a vineyard as you would for an almond?
So yes and no. So when you think, or I should say, when we think about water management services for vineyards, the technology is the same. And the way that I explain it, I actually just had a training with a new customer yesterday. And the way I explain it is, when you think about the Jain Logic technology, all the fundamentals are there and they're all the same. And it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, or I prefer Leatherman's. I'm a Leatherman man. And it's a multi-tool, right? And depending on what situation you go in, you're going to use different aspects of that tool, or you might use the same tool in one situation, but use it differently in a different situation. And that's what it's like using water management services when you switch from almonds to wine grapes, for example. So a lot of the fundamental principles are the same. We're tracking how much water we're applying, how much water we're using, how efficiently that water is applied, how much water we have, how much water we have stored in the soil, as a very generic approach. There's obviously a lot more details that go into that, but that's how we go into it when we start thinking about when we're managing water across the different crop types. And then as we start to dive into the details a little bit more, we start to look at, where's that water source coming from? That also makes a big difference in how we approach managing water for the different regions and the different crop types here. Are we looking at well water? Are we looking at canal water? And then we also start to look at the differences in soils as well. And Richard, I don't know if you know this or not, but California's a pretty big state, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, so in most cases, we're the size of 5 states. And so with that, when I'm looking at my water management users, they're all in different climates because they're so spread out.
Yeah.
So that's definitely another thing that we have to take into consideration. And I think one of the biggest differences when we start to look at the difference between, say, managing water for almonds versus managing water for vineyards is they have a very different growth stage and different phenological stages that we have to pay attention to. When we think about growing wine grapes, one of the biggest hot button words and one of the things that's most important to take into consideration is veraison. That's the time period where the grapes are putting on the color and the sugar content that are very crucial to making good wine. So we really want to make sure that leading up to that veraison period that we're not stressing the vines, right? That we're allowing those berries, those grapes to put on the size and the length that are needed. And then we then would control the stress at a certain point in time during that growth period to ensure that we're building up all the nutrients and all the minerals and all the sugars into that grape. So that way it's packaged up and it's ready to go to the processing facility to then make the wine at that point. So I like to think of it as, you're loading up a box and you're getting ready to, ship it to your friend. And you want to make sure that you got everything in there before it's shipped off. So that way you don't leave anything behind, right? In my mind, that's kind of the same thing that happens with wine grapes and inducing that controlled stress at a certain point in time. And along with that, the stress that we implore in wine grapes is a little bit more closely monitored than, say, almonds, for example. We do monitor and we do control the stress in almonds, but with wine grapes, it's slightly different. A lot of the wine grape growers will not only track the stress at certain periods of time, and they'll do pressure bombs just like almond growers will. But the difference is that they'll also look at the degrees Brix. They'll look at that sugar content as well, because that's really important for getting that flavor profile that they're trying to achieve with the different varieties.
Yeah, and I think this is so fascinating. And one of the first things I always think about when we talk about this is, man, how did they do this before they had technology to use, right? And I know a lot of it was based on the calendar of what my neighbor was doing, but.
Right.
But it does seem like, right, moisture monitoring has got to be super critical. Yes. And, are all these growers using soil moisture probes in their vineyards?
Yes. So I believe that soil moisture monitoring for water management is incredibly important and it's crucial. Now, you can get by with just looking at the satellite data, but in my opinion, I think having that soil moisture probe there with it is very important. I think that you really need to have that along with all the other information to really get all the benefit from the system that you can. And so one of the things that we think of is, I get asked this all the time, right? Well, how many probes do I need? And I love and I hate that question at the same time. Because it's not a blanket answer. So very much like when we're thinking about how to manage wine grapes versus almonds, there's some things that we take into consideration when we start to address that question. Well, how many probes do I need? Well, what I think carries the most weight is we look at the number of management zones, for example, because we're not managing to the soil type necessarily in most cases, and we're also not managing to the vine. We as much as we would like to irrigate to the plant itself, technology and the economics are not there. So we're really irrigating and managing to the majority. So that's usually one of the biggest drivers to determining, how many probes do we need when we're starting up a new water management project.
So Connor, I think a probe though is really, and I'm using a big generalized term, but it's a couple $1,000 maybe, right? Depending on the depth and all, and the installation, how difficult that would be. I can't imagine, I need to pull out my napkin and do some math on the back, but the value of an acre of vineyard grapes has to be so valuable. I think when I look at the ratio in comparison, I think this is pretty good insurance. And I know it's so much more than insurance.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And to put it into perspective, what we see, or what I see particularly, is when we start working with growers using the water management services, is instead of doing like you were talking about, kind of historically, what we do is we look at neighbors, we look at what we've historically done, and that's gotten us by in years past. But we have a lot more pressures in today's day and age, and our costs are a lot higher. So we really have to pivot and work around those. And so, instead of putting on a 24-hour slug, for example, what we historically would do is say, okay, I'm going to put on 24 hours on this block, and then I'll come back in 5 days and hit it again.
Right.
What if we instead could say, okay, I'm going to put on 16 hours? That's only a difference of 8 hours. And you think, well, is it really going to make that much of a difference? Well, think about our growers that are on the west side, for example, that are paying thousands of dollars an acre foot for water. Can reduce by 8 hours and split those irrigations up when possible and do more of a pulse regime. Those 8 hours over, multiple events over a week or even over a month, and you accumulate those over an entire growing season, that's adding up to some serious dollars. And that would actually cause the service or the system to pay for itself right away, just by making those small incremental savings. And it's not water that we have to consider as well. Something as simple as a soil moisture probe out there and cutting back on those few hours, that also turns into energy savings as well, especially if we don't have to run during peak hours. Let's say we can reduce our hours. That way we can run off peak hours at night. We don't have to pay that additional kilowatt charge during those hours, because we're able to be a little bit more tactical about how we approach that water management.
Yeah, that's awesome. That helps all of us. So, but then I was thinking, if I sign up for water management consulting services, do I have to buy probes?
No, that's the best part about water management services. And I think that's in my opinion, if I had to wager a guess, I think that's one of the biggest draws, is that it's a service that you're paying for. You're not buying the hardware outright. You're paying for a service, and the installation costs are actually on us. So what you're paying for is you're paying for us to come out there and put that hardware out there at our cost. And then we then start giving you those recommendations on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I really like that, because as a grower, I'm thinking, gee, how much do I invest in these probes? What's that payback? Especially if I'm starting, I don't know. I know from your perspective, the more or the appropriate amount of probes that you have out there, the better the data you're going to get for water management consulting services, the more success your growers are going to have, and ultimately more success you're going to have, right? Because it's your reputation.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think I've said this multiple times before, but one of the unforeseen benefits of this is that you're basically getting coached on how to employ this technology. No matter what your crop is, we're a very talented team here at Jain, and we have really excellent resources amongst our team members. And so by having the water management service, you're actually having somebody there coaching you, not only giving you really good recommendations, no matter what your crop is, but on top of that, you're also being coached on how to look at the data. Where do I look in the data to find the information that I need? That's a question that I think gets overlooked a lot, is, okay, I have access to all this data, but how do I find it and how do I use it? Well, with water management services, you have somebody there that's acting like your one-on-one coach that can help you with it. And, sometimes we joke, we say it's not water management services, it's actually more like water management therapy.
Right. I like that. So, and Connor, I think this is part of the entrepreneurial spirit that growers have.
Yes.
I think many of them feel like, well, and it's that independent spirit. I can figure it out. I can do it myself. I can make this instead of buy this, right? This is what makes them such good businessmen, but such good entrepreneurs. But at the same time, I always have found in my own life is that if I can find somebody to coach me, it gives me such a head start on what I'm doing, that I pick it up faster. I get the main concepts better. I have somebody to ask questions to, that it just accelerates. So I think it's a really good thing that what you guys are doing to kind of bridge that in independence, and at the same time keep the independence of the growers, because my gosh, they have so much knowledge of what's gone on in their fields over the years. It's kind of combining this technology and their experience. It's what a powerful combination.
Yeah, definitely. And, to also take it a step further, if growers did want to take it on themselves, like you were talking about, they are typically an independent bunch, which is great, which is why I like working with growers and farmers here in the Valley and across the state. Is, let's say at the end of a season or the end of 2 seasons, the grower decides that they actually want to take it over, that they don't necessarily need us holding their hand anymore. They can actually have that option to purchase the equipment outright and continue to utilize those tools, but be able to make those decisions on their own and find the data themselves. We do have that option as well. So it starts out as a per acre price, which I think meshes really well with how growers already think and work on a day-to-day basis. And then we can then move to actually getting them set up to be independent users. So again, one of the things that we hope for is that the growers work and really embrace the information and embrace the process, and that they end up becoming independent users themselves. And we actually have already seen that in just 1 season. And, we're almost like 3/4 of the way through this season, and we're still seeing really good success and really great response from all the growers that we're working with. And they're really latching on to the information that we're providing them.
Right. So help me there. Right. So I understand,
Sure.
there's some water savings, there's some other savings, there's some other value here. What have you seen? What have your growers experienced as far as the real benefits of water management consulting services?
Yeah, so I would say, I don't want to say baseline, but I would say the starting users that are utilizing mainly the soil moisture probes and the pressure sensors and the weather stations have seen water savings from from the service.
Yeah.
And what that is exactly what we were talking about, those small incremental savings in some instances. And in other instances, I've heard of growers saving up to 20-30% of their water usage over across the season. So that's kind of the first spot. We even had some of our growers, again, talking about the entrepreneurial spirit, that wanted to take it a step further. And along with water management services, they also had automation tied with that. So not only were they saving on water and fertilizer inputs, but they actually took it that next step and were also benefiting from having labor savings. So that way they could run the system in those off-peak hours and not have to pay a guy overtime to go out there and push the button on, come back, push the button off.
Right.
They're able to have the automation do it themselves.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. Now, you mentioned earlier too, I heard satellite imaging.
Yes.
And well, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I mentioned satellite imaging to one of the growers I was working with. And he was like, great, that's what I need. That's all I need. I'll take it. I'm like, no. You do need it, but there might be a few things you need with it. So are the vineyard growers, the wine grape growers, are they getting value out of satellite imaging? How are they using it?
Yes.
What do you see here?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think that if you don't have the satellite imagery, you're actually flying blind. You can get a lot of information off of a soil moisture probe, like we had discussed. You can get a lot of information off of a pressure sensor or weather station, but having that access to that satellite information is crucial in my mind. When you couple that information coming off of the satellite with a soil moisture probe, in my opinion, that's the perfect 1-2 punch, right?
Right.
Satellite images, telling us what that water consumption is for that field specifically, compared to something like a SIMA station or just a crop model. Those are slightly more generalized in comparison to having a satellite image that's telling you exactly what that water consumption is coming off of your field. I think that it's very, very important to have it in my mind. And then you couple that with the soil moisture probe and think about, okay, my crop consumed X last week, and my soil moisture probe is telling me that I'm at this percentage of my field capacity. both of those right there are really important to think about when you're creating your irrigation schedule for the coming week.
Yeah.
And on top of that too, the satellite image also comes with a vigor as well. So we were talking about veraison earlier, right? And managing that stress in the grapes to get the correct flavor profile that we're looking for. Well, when it's time for us to start inducing that controlled stress, we can start to see that response in the vigor images, satellite imagery, and we can really track and monitor that to make sure that we're not getting too out of hand. And then after that stress period and we want to start putting that water back on post-harvest, we can also track and make sure that that vigor value comes back up. So you get a lot of great information from the satellite. And it's not just images either. The thing that I really benefit from personally, I'm just saying, you know, I really benefit from this service as well, because it's not just the images, but it's actually giving me data points, hard numerical values that I can work with as I start to think through and create my irrigation recommendations for the week for my growers.
Right, right. So it's so interesting. The other thing I wondered about too, Connor, is, these growers, myself, we've got a lot to manage every day, every week. And I can't always get to a dashboard to look at things. Do I need a dashboard to look at the satellite data, or how do I get it?
Yeah, there's a few different ways that you can get the satellite data. And this is how I just train the growers on utilizing the system. You kind of start from a 30,000 foot view and you can start to work your way down. And, you know, Richard, if you want, I can actually pull it up right now and I can show you how easy you can access the satellite data and all the different ways that we can look at it if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great. But
Right.
I guess my point here is that some of this information just gets emailed to me, though, right?
So what we've done is we've actually are able to move beyond the email, and we started our new product line where we have Jain Logic available to growers as an entry-level service, but there's no sensors that need to be deployed. So I actually just did this with a grower recently where you can have access to Jain Logic and you can get signed up completely remotely. You don't even have to do any sort of field walk or determine what your soil types are. We can just discuss and outline those fields in the system, and then you can go ahead right away within 1 to 2 weeks, have that satellite information start coming in and giving you that information on your water consumption and your crop response.
Interesting, because I keep on hearing that, gee, I can get satellite data anywhere almost today. And it's really what you do with that satellite data that makes the difference, right?
Right.
So this satellite data comes right into Jain Logic.
Correct.
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's pretty powerful. So yeah, I'd love to take a look if you have time to show us.
Yeah, of course. Let me just go ahead and pull that up for you really quick here. And I will do that. So let me get past the post attendee right here. When I was jumping on the Zoom with you. Okay, there we go. So we actually do have one of the vineyard growers pulled up right here. And so the very first place that you can access that satellite data is actually overlaying it directly on the map itself. And by overlaying it on the map, you can start to see if there's any sort of what we would call hot spots in the image itself. And there are some known here. We have some power lines that are running through the field. So we know that these are known hot spots. But for the most part, if I zoom in here, we can see that the field is fairly uniform where the vines are growing.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks more like a lake than a vineyard.
Right. And so with the ET imagery, the images are going to go from red, where there's not a lot of water consumption, to a white, where there starts to be more water consumption, all the way to a blue and a dark blue. So we can see how dark blue the image is right now. So that means that obviously we're in the heat of the season and the vines are consuming a lot of water. And then to actually start to look at those numbers, if I select this field right here, I can actually scroll down to this information in a tabular form. So you can see right here, I just hover my mouse on this point right here, and I can see right away, okay, last week, my vines consumed on average 1.9 acre inches of water. And a majority of my field, 90% of my field, actually consumed 2.3 acre inches of water. So if I'm thinking about irrigation management, I'm thinking about weather last week and weather in this coming week. If they're going to be about the same, well, I'm going to want to put on about 2.3 acre inches of water, assuming I have room in my soil profile, right?
Right.
So again, going back, I think having access to the soil moisture probe with the satellite data is a perfect 1-2 punch. And
Yeah,
then
that's
always go back historically and look at what that water consumption was. And we can also see a trend line here, right? We want to see that trend line matching that growth curve of the crop. And if it's not, then we know that we have an issue.
so, okay, so this is the main way that you can use this, right? Just go on the dashboard first. And if I'm managing many acres, I'm going to see exactly where I need to go at the beginning of the day if I have a problem.
Yep.
Right. So that's number one. Number two, though, I can take it to the next step and really start to understand how much water my crop needs and how much it's actually getting.
Exactly. And even if you just had the satellite service itself, you can see right here that based on crop model, crop spacing, crop type, and the age of the crop, you would actually also get access to a forecast right here. So you would be able to look at what was consumed and look at what the crop model is forecasting and start to make that distinction about how many hours should I apply in the coming week. And then when you have a pressure sensor deployed, so if, again, kind of switching back between satellite only versus satellite with hardware, the benefit of having the hardware is you can look at what was forecasted versus what was actually applied. So far, we're a little bit behind this week on the number of hours that we want to apply. We're only halfway done, so we still have more time to go. But last week, we can see that we applied more than what we should have. So you get a lot of information really quickly. Like you said, you don't have a whole lot of time to be jumping on a dashboard and spending a lot of time, but the information is very easy to find in Jain Logic. You just have to open it up, quickly find that information you need, and you're on your day, on with your day, excuse me.
Yeah. Do I need to get all my irrigators on this too, or can I generate maybe a forecast or a schedule and just send it to them?
Yeah, definitely. You can do both. I have some people that want to get their entire team utilizing the same platform. And then I have other people that like to just download the information and send it to their irrigators. So you can definitely come to the irrigation schedule right here, open that up and add the number of hours that you would like to apply. And you can print it out, or you can actually email it to anybody that you would like.
Yeah, it's pretty handy. I could print it out, hand it to them, give them an idea what to watch for or concerns I may have this week.
Right.
And have that whole communication. It can be done on email too, but either way, it would be great.
Yes, definitely. So a lot of powerful tools, no matter what level that somebody enters in that. And again, it's a Swiss Army knife. It's kind of a multi-tool, if you will, that depending on what your crop type is and your region, you can use this tool to help affect your irrigation management in a very positive way.
Yeah. So I see the advantages, right? I get all this, but thinking about all this and what I do get as a grower, I think this is going to be really expensive, Connor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get that a lot. I do. That's another one of my, love-hate questions. But again, the nice part about water management services is that it's a per acre price. And let me go ahead and share my screen one more time here for you. And I will actually pull up that pricing. So that way our viewers here can see that it's actually not so scary to get involved with a service like this. And again, those incremental savings or even some of those big savings that you receive from working with a system like this or a service like this would actually pay for itself in usually a very short period of time. And then along with that, we like to put our money where our mouth is. We really do believe that this is a very solid and beneficial service. So anybody that would be a new water management user that would sign up, we do offer 100% money back guarantee. And I made sure to underline that here on the slide because I really wanted to drive that point home. We really do believe that the service that we're providing is top notch. It's the best in the business. And so anybody that uses the system, or excuse me, uses the service, and at the end of the season, for whatever reason, decides that they don't want to move forward, we'll go ahead and give that money back, and we'll remove all that hardware back out of the field for them at no cost. And then
that is pretty powerful, right? You don't see this that much anymore, right? It's like an old school deal, right? Who does this? 100% money back guarantee. But I know why. It sounds risky maybe to some people, but when I know you and your team and all the work you guys do, right? Yeah. From probe installation, distribution uniformity of a whole system. I mean, you guys put together a great package, and I understand why that value would be there.
Yeah.
I'm also interested, though, in the 90-day free trial for satellite service, right? This is where I don't need a probe. If I just want to get started with satellite, I can do this.
Yep. This is what I would call our entry-level package. And I think it's a very great package. Again, we were talking about the benefits of just having the satellite service by itself. I think that this is a great place for people to start if they're thinking about putting some data to work in their day-to-day operations. It's not a huge undertaking, and it's a very simple thing to start working with and bringing into your considerations when you're making your irrigation decisions every single week. And so, like we have on the slide here, we do offer a 90-day free trial for people who are wanting to get started with that. So again, it's a great place to start, and you can always grow from there, because once you have the system going, you can always just expand and add on however or whatever devices you'd like, and we can start going from there and building you a really rock solid system.
Yeah, and Connor, I hate to game the system, but one thing I thought of right away when I saw this is, if I'm a current customer and I've got Jain logic already, but I don't have it on every field, I could add the satellite service on those other fields for no charge for 90 days and get all of it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, now that's a great opportunity, right? I hope everybody will take advantage of that who's not 100% integrated.
Yep. Again, just talking about efficiency and thinking about how we can make our dollars stretch further. For some of our existing Jain Logic users that might have some hardware that's already deployed, this is a great way to extend all of the great benefits that they're already receiving from Jain Logic, but without having to deploy more hardware. They can actually get more information over a broader area with the satellite service, because you can think about every pixel in that satellite image as a sensor, and that sensor is giving them very valuable information on water consumption and crop response that they can use to influence their irrigation management decisions.
I hadn't heard it described that way before. That's very visual, thinking about how much data you're actually getting. That's fantastic. Now, Connor, if I want to do this, if I want to get signed up, how do I get a hold of you so I can do this?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually have my contact information here. So let me pull that up on this next slide here for you. So here's
and I do want to remind everybody that we are going to send them a copy of this presentation, and in that will be Connor's contact information as well. But okay.
Yeah, so you can contact me either via email, or you can also reach out to me at the phone number below. I'm still working on my carrier pigeon skills, so if that's your preferred method of reaching out to me, we might need to wait a little bit, but cell phones are always welcome.
Yeah, and Connor, if people just have questions in general, is it okay? They give you a call too?
Of course. I love questions. I'm somebody that I need to hear things 3, maybe 5 times before it's really solidified in my mind. So I always love receiving questions. And so feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you might have.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Connor, thanks for coming on today and explaining water management consulting services for Vineyards for us, as well as presenting 2 super great offers. I'm really excited about those offers, and looking forward to seeing what happens here in the second half of the season, or really closer to the final third of the season coming up. And it's been a great year. So anyway, thank you for joining us. I want to say to all of you who joined us and watched, thanks for coming on. Thanks for spending a little bit of your day with us. Remember, you can see all our trainings at the janesusa.com/trainings on our website. Or you can just search Jain Irrigation Trainings. You'll find it that way too, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. One of the things that gets me going every day is to think about the people that are listening to the podcast while they're working, right? Improving their skills in water management while they're actually doing water management. That's a great concept to me. So anyway, thank you. We will be back here Friday with Corey Broad. He's going to talk about water management for pistachios. Right, more popular in growing crop, more popular in growth in the Central Valley of California. So be very interesting to hear what he has to say, especially with the drought and everything going on. So again, Connor, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys Friday.